What's up, everyone? This is Ignatius. This is now my 15th video in Path of Exile 2. Alright, so while I was sleeping last night, GGG announced some more new changes, and some of them are really under the hood. I think Reddit came out with something saying that Amazon was nerfed. Always beware of Reddit. The mind virus is alive and well there, and I do think that some of the initial scares around Amazon are misplaced and inaccurate. There was a fantastic conversation going on in my Discord server while I was sleeping, but there was also some panic, like, oh my god, are you still going Amazon? What are you going to do about these changes? So we did have like a really nice follow-up discussion. I did a lot of math behind the scenes and have asked my math to be validated by some of our PoE gurus in the Discord server and also by some AI. So I want to go over what I've determined about the changes for Amazon and where we stand. The TLDR, if you don't want to watch me do all the math and stuff, is that Amazon is buffed by these changes. That's probably really surprising. It's not supposed to be a hot take. It's just the math. So let's go over some of the recent changes. Number one, with evasion. So player evasion now works on all hits except boss skills that have a red flash. What does this mean? Well, if you're unfamiliar with the other seasons of PoE 2, what this means is that they have now applied Acrobatics to Evasion. Why did they do this? I'm not totally sure. Acrobatics in 0.1 was extremely powerful for anybody who knew what it meant and was stacking Evasion. Basically, whereas ordinarily you can only avoid strikes and projectiles, with Acrobatics you're able to avoid damage from all hits. There are like some exceptions, but with this text, the only exception seems to be boss skills that have a red flash. I assume like AoE ground effects still apply. I'm not sure. And then of course, damage over time effects never apply to these things. PoE 1 bros are probably more familiar with like what this originally meant. And then of course, no one knows what this means. I'm still very confused overall, like what GGG is doing with Evasion, because like if they'd have done all this in the initial release, it'd be like, okay, well, this was some planned new approach they have based on information we don't know, but they're like patching these things in as we go, and it's very confusing like what they're getting at with this. Now, this is a net buff because we now have Acrobatics for free. Previously, I didn't really care about our defensive stats on Amazon. We're just going to kill everything immediately, and that's our defense. But now, since we were stacking Evasion anyway, and Evasion now has Acrobatics, we have a net buff from Evasion. Now, what did they do to sort of give and take on this? Well, they changed the accuracy, chance to hit, and Evasion formula. The net, kind of text-based short story is they lowered the hits that you will evade by default. So you'll need to stack more evasion. Now, this is consistent with what Acrobatics did. You could evade all hits, but your evasion rating was reduced by 75%. I can't remember what it was in .1. Maybe it was like 50% or something, but it was still workable. And then in .2, they just nerfed it to the ground and didn't care about it. So now they like have some new balance they're striking with it, and I'm sure since it's applying to all evasion for all characters, it's something reasonable, whereas this was like very unreasonable and unusable. So I'm going to say like defensively, we have a net buff on Amazon for sure. Now, let's look at what else they changed. This is sneaky. So this used to say something different. Critical Strike Notable no longer specifies it ignores Hobble. We used to have a nerf listed here, and it's gone. The nerf was, so if we look at the node prior to the nerf, it was additional crit chance to 25% excess chance. Originally in the patch notes, they nerfed this down to 15%. It was a 45% or a 40% nerf in like the initial estimation, and now they just removed it. So we're back to 25% rather than 15%. Yay! However, they did change, we think, the chance to hit formula for players. So this is on the PoE 2 wiki, which was updated after these notes. Thanks, whoever's like doing the awesome work to like make this thing up to date. So with this new formula, we do have a limit on the uncapped chance to hit. It's kind of a misnomer here. It's not necessarily uncapped. It really is capped. And the number we care about, I made a new calculator for us, is this right here. What is our base crit bonus from the Amazon Ascendancy? Again, TLDR, it is basically the same as the calculations I did in my initial evaluation. However, it's easier to get there now. So my initial evaluation, I was getting about 6 with about 21,000 accuracy. And that was based on my POB accuracy for like in-game holopalm, 21,287. And I was able to get a 6 point something % buff to base crit hit chance. I really only care about 6 because when I come into this calculator and I put a 6 here, this can get to 100 with a 300 here and just an ES chest. There's a lot under the hood going on there with that, and watch my previous video if you want to get caught up. But basically we want this to hit 6, and how do we get there? Now, and what I found is that if our Pinnacle boss has around 400, and it could be less than that with MAME effects, and with our accuracy at about 15,000, which is less than my in-game accuracy stats, we are at a flat 6. So let me go ahead and punch that in to see it live. So let's do 15,000 attacker accuracy. That's us. And let's say defender evasion is 400, which is like Zesht with the new reduction in monster accuracy in the patch, and potentially some MAME effects. So we are at 6 with a 124.01 uncapped chance to hit. Long story short, I kind of already said this, but long story short, this change should not freak anyone out and make you scared of Amazon. We are still hitting 6, and we're hitting it easier. Net result of this whole change, I do think for the Hollow Palm archetype, is a buff to Amazon with even better evasion. It's kind of amazing. I'm a little surprised they did it. Since we don't need as much accuracy here, we get to free up affixes on gear. So I have accuracy on some of the gear here. This is like unrealistic, like 550 on a helmet I had. I think I had some on the gloves and some on the amulet. So we can hike down base accuracy on items, or we can remove some accuracy nodes on the tree. We might be able to go around this and just get stats. That might change our pathing to come over here to connect to the monk start. Lots of possibilities. Freedom in stats with Dex. There's lots we could do. So yeah, not needing 7,000 more accuracy rating to hit a 6 base crit bonus is really awesome. All right, in light of all these changes, I've made my first update to the Mobalytics guide, and I just did like a TLDR summary of this. All right, the last thing I want to mention has to do with the changes to Ignite and Flammability and how these apply to Gas Arrow. So if you've been looking at my build at level 22, we switched to Gas Arrow because it is really powerful. It's honestly completely OP, especially for finishing out the campaign. And we have some changes to how Gas Arrow gets ignited. So fire damage no longer inherently ignites. It inflicts something called Flammability. Multiple hits can stack it, and to get to 100% chance to be ignited. This one's more important. Effects which don't hit but ignite targets as though they did, such as Incinerate or Ignited Ground, also inflict flammability, but are not able to ignite targets until the target has 50% flammability. So in our build, we use Herald of Ash. We ignite surrounding enemies if the overkill damage is at least 20% of enemies' max life. That is so situational, I don't really want to deep dive that. More importantly, we were using Flame Wall to ignite enemies. So this one I'm confused on, because this one says ignites as though dealing fire damage. But it also says creates a wall of fire which ignites. So maybe they're going to change the actual text on this. I think they probably should. Yeah, and there's a chance that the net result is that we throw a gas arrow, we cast a flame wall, or we have a Herald of Ash going on, or we're shooting with fire damage, and we may have a delay between the gas arrow and the ignition. And that delay may continue as more monsters come in and we continue to try to ignite more monsters. I don't know how this plays out. If anybody thinks they have a really good prediction of how this plays out, let me know. Flammability is a keyword in PoE2 DB. but it says that it lowers fire res. So I don't know. GGG is a little behind here, letting us know how this is going to play out. And honestly, it probably doesn't impact too many things, except for could be a huge impact for Gas Arrow. We do have a flexible approach here. Basically, we'll get to level 22. We throw on a Gas Arrow and a Flame Wall. Well, we already have the Flame Wall. We throw these two on, and we see how it works. You know, just go down into Act 2 somewhere and try and ignite some monsters. We may see that it works just fine and there's no change. We may see that there's a slight delay, and we have to evaluate whether it's worth proceeding with that slight delay. We may see that there is a long delay or intermittently monsters not igniting, which would be really bad. Now, it's worth mentioning that we only need one monster to ignite per Gas Arrow because it creates an explosion that affects all the monsters, right? So the cloud will detonate if hit by a scale or an ignited enemy touches it. So that's important to know. And then also, like, if we test it out and it doesn't work at level 22, we just turned off Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. We haven't changed a whole lot in the character, so we just go back to OP Lightning as always. Last thing I want to mention is there is a helmet to be on the lookout for. It would be smart of me to not mention this helmet and then just go get it myself while I am progressing. There we go. Radiant Grief. Again, this is an as though effect. So I don't think it's going to be instant still. I think this is still impacted by this as though stuff here. But you know, if we stack these as though effects, maybe we get to a point where it's instant. I don't know. Again, no idea how this plays out. But this is Radiant Grief is a really nice helmet to look out for in this Gas Arrow build. All right. I'm going to stop there. I've yapped a lot, but hopefully this resolves questions for anybody who needs to watch. I did build a new tool. This is an Amazon crit calculator. It's in this same spreadsheet that I shared earlier. If you're coming in, there's a lot of people using this thing now. If you're coming in and you're trying to edit the numbers live, you can do two things. You can download a copy of this for yourself, or you can literally grab the whole spreadsheet. I've made it copy pastable and downloadable, paste it out into your own and use it on your own. The accuracy calc is pretty straightforward. Just put in attacker accuracy and defender evasion, and you get your Amazon base crit bonus. And yeah, that's it. TLDR, Amazon is buffed. I'm even more excited than before. Thank you.